Good morning, Olga. Thank you for joining me for a conversation today, which we'll push out to the membership. But just to kick things off, Olga, can you tell us a little bit about APSA and why you're so passionate about it and your involvement in the organisation?
Good morning, Paul. APSA, it's a brilliant, association. It's, the peak voice for Australian shippers and advocates for a stronger, more efficient and more sustainable ocean freight supply chain. Represents the interests of exporters, importers, logistic users who depend on reliable, cost-effective ways to access global markets. So, I'm really passionate about APSA because trade is absolutely fundamental to Australia. We're on an island, we're an island nation. And when the supply chain is under pressure, like it is, today, we are there to help. It affects businesses, farmers, manufacturers, consumers. So that voice is really important to help all our shippers. I've seen, APSA just doesn't talk about problems. There's action. It pushes for practical reform, that delivers commercial value to industry, including, efficiency, transparency, and fairer outcomes for shippers. I've seen, firsthand how important advocacy is when businesses are dealing with cost escalation, delays, shipping disruptions. They need this support. So APSA is the voice that gives industry a credible, united voice, basically on all costs.
Thanks, Olga. And they always say, if you want to get something done, give the job to a busy person, and we've definitely done that with yourself, Olga. You've been chair now for quite a while. What inspired you to take on the chair role for APSA?
Well, I joined the Committee of Management in 2016. 2020, I was elected as chair. Again, it's stepping into the role was, really driven by a desire to contribute more directly at an industry level. I've spent my career in logistics and trade, so I understand how critical these issues are for all exporters, importers, shippers. I wanted to help make sure industry had a strong, credible voice and advocating sensible reform. And APSA, I believe, is the way to do this for all Australian shippers. Over time, it became clear to me that how important practical industry leadership is, particularly when supply chains are under pressure and members, really need strong representation. So for me, taking on the chair role was about helping ensure Australian shippers have a voice.
Yeah, well, thanks, Olga. And look, Manildra, where you've got your day job, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, container volume through Port Botany. So can you just tell us a little bit about your day job rather than on top of everything that you do for APSA? What's your day job?
Well, I'm I joined Manildra in 2004, right? I'm the global logistics manager, looking after the international supply chain, including imports and export. My role is quite broad. Working for Manildra, it's working across, terminals, shipping lines, documentation, assurance, packaging, sales, government stakeholders and customers. I'm very, very proud to work for Manildra Group. It's a family-owned business, and they have grown into one of the largest, as you say, exporters out of New South Wales ports, Port Botany. We export around, 30,000 containers, give or take a few, depending on what's going on in the market. And the job provides me a practical, on the ground understanding of exactly what Australian shippers are going through And, you know, because we move product every day. We manufacture 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we're regional exporters. So that's another added complexity to getting one container to the port. So I think it helps me understand and then better help shippers within the APSA family.
Well, it certainly does. And look, again, the experience across the whole committee and the membership is invaluable. But Olga, you touched on it earlier. We're in crazy times, especially with what's happening now in the Middle East. What do you see as some of the challenges, and let's try a bit more positive too, some of the opportunities in the weeks, months, years ahead?
Well, the challenges, I think, for members right now is uncertainty with what is going on, you know, fuel prices. Everyone in Australia is affected. You know, the small exporter, the small importer, it's going to really make it very difficult for them to keep going unless things change. Over the last few years, you know, I've seen major supply chain disruptions, you know, with COVID, port congestions, vessel delays, shipping lines that are managed and run overseas. I mean, this is another thing for me that's a challenge. We don't have our own, shipping line. Australia did have A&L, but no longer have one. So we're quite vulnerable at times, I believe, especially now. Global events disrupt shipping networks, drive up costs, reduce reliability for all our shippers. You know, closer to home too, terminal access charges and detention fees continue to put unfair pressure on all shippers. So there's a real opportunity here, I think, to push for better policy setting, stronger oversight, and a more competitive, resilient freight system that supports Australian industry. You know, one of the lessons, I think, from the last few years is that shippers often are expected to absorb the impact of disruptions that they do not create and can't control. I think that's something that, you know, I want to try and help shippers, you know, get that voice into governments and get them some support. That is why my APSA's advocacy remains so important. You know, not just in responding to disruption, but in pushing for a fair and more resilient supply chain over the longer term.
Well, thanks, Olga. And look, the final question to wrap up this quick interview. I know you're excited, and it's a big opportunity for us. The Australia and New Zealand Shipping and Logistics Conference, an opportunity to get that message out and to government officials as well. But what's excited you about this conference?
Well, it's the opportunity to bring people together from across the supply chain, to have practical solutions, focused conversations. You know, Australia and New Zealand face many similar challenges in trade and logistics. I mean, Australia and New Zealand are the gateway to North America. So shipping lines come through here, but, you know, we can then work on the real value in sharing, you know, perspectives, and learning from each other. I think that's really important. It's actually, you know, an amazing time I think we're going to have with our counterparts in New Zealand. Events like this help build stronger networks, sharpen the policy conversation, and maintain momentum behind reforms that matter to industry. You know, I'm also excited, Paul, about the calibre of, you know, the speaker program, especially in particular, the US Federal Maritime Commissioner, Rebecca Dye, in person. Commissioner Dye has been such an important voice, you know, internationally and on shipping competition, detention, demurrage, port congestion, you know, and COVID-era supply chain disruption. So it's going to be great to have her here and have her speak to our members. I think that's a real positive for us to have someone of such importance, and so, you know, the involvement that she has with shipping, and let's face it, shipping Europe to America Asia to America, you know, that's global markets, and someone with that importance is brilliant to have, and shared information.
Thanks, Olga. So, look, again, we are so appreciative of having you leading the way at APSA. Your passion, your drive, your enthusiasm, and your support is just invaluable to us. And you know, we really hope that we get a big turnout for this conference, really showcasing what we're all about. And Olga, thanks for your time this morning. And yeah, we look forward to everyone registering now to come and join us at this event.
No, thank you, Paul. And I think it's important to note, everyone, all the committee of management, they're all so passionate. We've got some amazing committee members and members in APSA and FTA. So I'm very excited for it. So thank you, Paul. Thank you for the opportunity to have a chat with you.
Okay. Thanks, Olga.
Bye.